So, Gabe, let me start with you. The significance of this here today. The Prime Minister saying that he is essentially resigning not only as leader of his party, but as Prime Minister, and that this is going to be a status quo. He'll stay in charge until the 24th of March.
Yeah, that's right, Jose. Look, hugely significant. Our key ally to the north, Prime Minister Trudeau, resigning, stepping down as party leader now. And this has huge implications for the future Trump administration. As we had just been discussing, President-elect Trump threatening that 25% tariff against Canada and wanting to see real changes in the way Canada treats its neighbor to the south. And President-elect Trump has mocked Prime Minister Trudeau, and Trudeau has been a leader that in some ways has faced a lot of issues that are similar to what President Biden has faced here at home. Inflation, dismal poll numbers, and President Biden indeed stepped aside several months ago. Now it appears that Prime Minister Trudeau is suffering that, bowing to that same sort of pressure, this populist backlash really that we've been seeing with leaders across the world. So President-elect Trump, Jose, has voiced frustration about his view and how the U.S. has subsidized Canada. He wants to see more action on immigration. And in fact, Prime Minister Trudeau just several weeks ago bowed to pressure from the president-elect and announced there would be more funding for some immigration measures, an immigration crackdown that Canada, essentially bowed to pressure from President-elect Trump. But Trump himself, he met with Prime Minister Trudeau just several weeks ago in late November, early December, and just several days after that mocked him on social media, calling him the governor of the 51st state of Canada. So certainly some very strained relations there. We, of course, don't have a reaction from the current White House just yet. After this announcement, we're out to them to see if there might be any immediate reaction. But a very positive relationship between President Biden and Prime Minister Trudeau. They had just spoken just several weeks ago on the sidelines of the G20 summit in Brazil. But certainly that breaking news, the Prime Minister just now announcing that he will step down as the party leader, Jose.
Yeah. Yeah, and Peter, there is a question I guess many would have as to why now, right? I mean, Parliament is not in session in Canada until the month of March. There is clearly there has been a deterioration of the Prime Minister's support within his own political party, also the party that has joined to make the possibility of a majority in Parliament there in Canada. That support has essentially fizzled out. But then you do see that Trump mocking Trudeau in recent weeks. Trudeau caught on a microphone a few years ago mocking Trump when Trump was president. How do you think the president-elect is likely to view this announcement?
Well, no doubt he will consider himself to be responsible because he is responsible for all things that he likes and not responsible for anything he doesn't like. And he will no doubt, I'm sure, take credit for this and crow about this and say this is a result of Trudeau's terrible relationship that he had with him, Trump, and that therefore he's paying a price for not being nicer to Trump. That's the way he will see this. That's the way he normally casts these kinds of things. Of course, this goes beyond Trump. Trump is definitely a factor. But Trudeau's political standing, his ground had shifted beneath him long before Trump's, re-election in November. He has once been, of course, a shining star in the political firmament in Canada, but people have long since lost their faith in him. His government, as you say, was having a hard time keeping that coalition together. Chrystia Freeland, his trusted deputy, resigned with a blast at his leadership, which was, I think, a devastating blow for him. And his time clearly was over. He's facing a political circumstance at home that didn't sustain a continued leadership, and he's come to recognize that and acknowledge that today.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way that he could continue in power going forward after March 24th with the NDP leader and the MDP completely out of that coalition that they needed and required in order for him to stay in power. But Senator, this change in leadership, what do you think the repercussions of that are going to be as we go forward? We're talking about the 24th of March, at least before anything can change in Canada. That's already Trump 2 in power. How do you think that change is going to represent any kind of options or possibilities going forward for example, issue of USMC, of, tariffs going forward from the United States towards Canada?
I mean, I think that the prime minister just put sovereignty on the ballot. And he knew that he was not the person to carry that banner. And you say, why now? I think he watched what happened in this country when an unpopular president stayed too long and what that meant for the Democratic Party and what that could mean for the Liberal Party. One thing that people are forgetting is the USMCA, which was the NAFTA replacement, actually requires a renegotiation. And the irony of the president, the future president, basically complaining about the relationship is he negotiated, his administration negotiated the USMCA. And there's no more important two trading partners for the United States than Canada and Mexico. And so for a state like mine, North Dakota, that relationship with Canada is critical to our economy. And so I think Trump's never really understood the interaction on this continent between these countries. And for him to criticize and basically say, you're taking advantage of us, he negotiated a bad deal. The guy who is the art of the deal did a bad deal, I guess. And so I think for Justin Trudeau and for the Liberal Party, they needed this change in order to maintain some semblance of power in Canada. But I also think that sovereignty, which is critical to the Canadian people, now is on the ballot. When Trump says you're going to be the 51st state, that relationship will be a key political talking point, I think, during this election.
Yeah, I mean, and Peter, the fact is that UMCA, with good and bad, was certainly a step forward for what was in existence before UMCA. And I'm just wondering, and as the senator is saying, I mean, this is a time when things have to be renegotiated. Is this an opening for a stronger USMCA going forward?
Well, we'll see. I mean, what we now have, of course, is a period of turmoil and uncertainty in Canada for a little while, because whoever will take over for Trudeau, in 6 weeks or whatever it is, will then have to prepare for domestic elections later in the year. And that means that it will be, a very politically fraught moment to make a new deal with the United States. You're going to want to show your toughness on behalf of Canada. At the same time, you don't want the negative repercussions that could come from a Trump tariff war against our northern neighbors. So it's a very fraught moment, I think, for whoever it is steps in at this point as leader, and I think that it makes it unpredictable.